So Breck, do you think what do you think?
Yeah, let's kick it off. I think we're ready to get started. We always get started about five after to let people get into the room, and yeah, I think we're good to go. So
Okay, thanks,
go ahead.
thanks, Breck. Good to be here with Breck, the healthcare disruptor, and also our advocate and proponent and change agent for community wellness. And then Dr. Bob Levine, our renowned brain researcher and expert in drug-free pain elimination. And then I'm Tim Daniels, your wellness plan manager and expert in the PEMF technology that supports things as well. Okay, and we form right now the group we call WellWaveNOW. What WellWaveNOW is about is bringing wellness to America. You know, as part of my work, I work with a lot of healthcare practitioners, and I'm not always surprised any longer, but I'm always kind of astounded at that every healthcare provider I go into, that those rooms are jam-packed with people. And most of their being, so mainly they're addressing health conditions. And so part of our mission is to, we'd love to see those rooms empty except for people coming in for their checkups and preventative work, but certainly reduce those and show people how to work hand in hand with those healthcare providers to achieve wellness, which is goes back in the performance. It goes into performance, going into satisfaction, goes beyond the disease state into overall well-being. And so that's what we're about here at WellWaveNOW, is doing that, trying to do that one individual at a time as we can through things like our discussion today, but also you might have heard a little dialogue with Philomena, who is very good in the dietary world and food as medicine and nutrition, and working with those providers to enable them to get their message out and to help others. So that's what WellWaveNOW is about, helping in the individual basis, helping practitioners that can create that wave of wellness, getting them the audience and the help they need, and then also just getting that out to the changing their overall distribution of wellness in America. Is that, Brett, Bob? Is that fair? Anything else you two would like to add to that?
I couldn't
No,
add
no.
one thing to that. That's great. Thanks, Tim.
All right, thank you. And so today we're focusing on hypertension. And it just struck us as we were talking, and now that's some astounding the statistics. Throw those out a little bit. Where I saw that so the Center for Disease Control, and I think it was the American Heart Association and others, were showing that there were almost 48% of Americans over the age of 20 had hypertension. So it was estimates like 112, 109 million, 112 million about on that. That's just a phenomenal amount. And then of that, I was saying that even astounding more was that 78% of those who knew they had hypertension didn't have it under control. And there are many, and given how hypertension can affect people, even if they have it for 6 months, and we'll talk a little about that, but even 6 months of hypertension can be very damaging. So that really told us we wanted to try and start doing something about that. And then it even struck us more that there was still a high percentage of people of the estimate that had hypertension that didn't even realize they had it for one reason or another. Okay? So those are the things that really said we've got to try as part of this WellWave, keep our eye on hypertension, more than an eye on it, take some steps to try and help people out in that regard. Okay. So
Well, yeah,
go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say high blood pressure is considered one of the main silent killers because people don't feel it, they don't know they have it, and then it comes on, and then strokes happen and heart attacks happen. So it's really important that people keep an eye on what's going on with their cardiovascular system, their heart, their blood pressure, things like that. Really important.
Yep. And that was kind of the subtitle to our well, I think it was, can't remember the subtitle of primary tab. We said unmasking a silent killer, and that's really what it is, because it's not until late stages the symptoms show up. Yet your damage is being done that can really cause you to have those things you talk about, Bob, heart attack, stroke, damage to kidneys and other things, even very early in the cycle, less than 6 months, those things can start happening to you. Okay.
Yeah, I wish I knew back 1984, 1984, when my father died of a massive heart attack, giving a lecture in Northwestern University. If I wasn't versed in all the things I know now about how to help him. It would be great to help him, but you know, he had it. He wasn't watching it careful enough, and boy, it took him down fast.
Right.
It was really sad. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Yep, and sorry you had to experience that. Certainly sorry that he went through that. And that's the other part. So much of this, especially with hypertension, is preventable. And that's what we want to kind of get into. And part of that first part of prevention is having that awareness that you have it. You know, there's a reason why every time you go, you know. I won't drag everybody in through why, but you know, I've been seeing all kinds of doctors here in the past year, both personally and then professionally. And when I see them personally, every time I go in, they take that blood pressure. Now, yes, sometimes it's to check for that hypertension, but also it's to give indications of whether or not something else is going on in the body that could be indication of it or damage has been done. But there's a reason why they look at that so much. And so certainly, but you know, most people will see that physician once a year on their health check. That's too long, in my opinion. I want your opinion, Breck and Bob. Too long, in my opinion, but to go in between those checking that blood pressure. What do you think, Breck?
Yeah, I know it's something, you know, especially as you start to get up in age, that you should be checking on a regular basis, right? Because it is an indicator of other things going on, stress even, right? So if you're living with a little bit more stress than usual, check that blood pressure, because it is that sneaky one that kind of sneaks up on you and can cause other problems if it's left unchecked too long, right? Dr. Bob gave an example. I have the same example with my, you know, grandfather that you know, died way too young, and it was a combination of things. It wasn't just that he had a heart attack. It was what led up to it, and his lifestyle, right? That led up to that. And then one major event of him overexerting himself, which would be something fairly normal, you know, somebody in normal health condition would have been able to survive just fine, but he didn't survive because of his lifestyle and everything that led up to that heart attack.
Absolutely.
You know, when we talk about chronic pain, we talk about, some people say, I just bent over to pick up the newspaper and my back was shot. And you know, well, you know, was it really just bending over, picking it up, or were there a lot of underlying factors that developed over the course of decades that led to that one event? Same with high blood pressure. You know, oh, I just had a massive heart attack. What happened? Well, it all happened in the decades before that massive heart attack, really. So it's important to keep an eye on. I think everybody ought to have a blood pressure, you know, blood pressure monitoring system at home, and they can do that, you know, at least once a week. Just check it out; it's really worthwhile. Same with you know, blood oxygen levels. It's really important and those are inexpensive things to buy. You know,
that's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Dr. Bob, on that, because now I'll preface this a little bit. I recommend to all my clients when I do wellness plan management, but I take my own advice and I do it for myself. And how I got into it most recently was mentioned going to see all those doctors. And every time I went in, I've got what's called lab coat syndrome. Picked that up late in life, where I get in there and I get scared. I'm always worried. I'll admit it. Even though I'm a macho Nebraskan, it's not fair to do that. I get scared when I go to see those doctors. I'll always think I'm going to hear something bad from them, say it's finally hitting me. And my blood pressure and pulse shoots way up there. It'll get up there like that's gone up to 150 on the blood. Well, I mean, what's that? The systolic part of the top one.
Yes, systolic.
And it's been up to 150 on that, and but pulse has been up at 140. And they always want to send me to go get a stress test. They say, well, boy, you got this fat rapid heartbeat. They call it tachycardia. And they said, you've got that, and what's changing here? Have you had a stress test? When are we going to send you a stress test? Have we ever sent you to the cardiologist? And I'm sitting there saying, boy, you know, I swim, I work out. When I lift, it doesn't bother me. I sit at home, I can tell you, I take my resting pulse rate, you know, 3 times a week. I can tell you that's usually between 56 and 62. I can tell they don't believe it. So I finally went out and I followed my own advice that I've been giving to others. And I bought a blood pressure monitor you just mentioned. It cost me $63 off of Amazon, now it is. And I did exactly what I talked to my clients about as I helped them achieve their own optimal wellness planning. I did my own baseline, taking it every day for 2 weeks. Now, And let you come in here, Bob, a little bit, because I'm good, because you always talk to me. You always queried me when I first got it. Did you do it correctly? Have you done that? So I want you to tell people how to take that correctly. But I took it, established my baseline over 2 weeks. And so now I go in and I show them, this is what it's like. And I calibrated it and had it taken. I went in and had my last appointment. They took the blood pressure there. They took it on. I took mine in, which I recommend, showed the same blood pressure. And I said, now here's my average. Okay. Now, Bob, so you're like Ronald Reagan in the CIA. You trust but verify. So I told you I take my blood pressure, and you started saying, "Well, how do you take it, Tim?" And so, what's the correct way to establish?
Well, I don't know if there's probably the worst way to take it is right after you've been vigorously moving around, whatever you've been doing, and then pop on the blood pressure cuff and take it immediately and get your blood pressure is 140 over 95.
Drink,
think you have
drink a bunch of coffee or Red Bull first too. Also,
right, exactly, yeah. So most everything I do in life involves an N of 3. In other words, 3 trials. Okay, whatever. Because an N of 1 is just you don't know. It could be aberrant. It could be way off the mark. So I usually take 3 blood pressure measures, and also I don't take the first one. I relax myself, sit down for a few minutes, make sure I'm really relaxed. Or when I get up in the morning, haven't been running around, so I'll sit down. I'll take my blood pressure 3 times, and I'll record it just to see what it is, and make sure that everything is where it ought to be. And so that's what it is for me. It's an N of 3. Whatever I'm doing it 3 times. If I'm doing blood pressure, blood sugar, I'm going to do it. I might do that one twice, and if they're the same, I'm fine. But if you have one high, one low, one up, one down, the third one really gets you, to know where your average is. So that's what I say. And Tim, I'm sure you do it perfectly. You're a stickler for detail.
Well, yes, but there were a couple other things that you checked to make sure I was doing too, Dr. Bob, which was you take it in the morning, and I also added you should take it at the same time each day, the most recommended time is to take it when you get up in the morning and after you urinate it, then take your blood pressure, blah, blah, that. And I was taking it twice, and Bob said 3 times. And I said, well, maybe I'll do 3, but twice is good enough for me. So that's that.
But if you get 2 identicals, you're good.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. And then you remember that, Breck, you have nerve enough to say, well, Tim, are you taking it standing or seated? I said, yes, Bob, I take it seated, and I take it when I'm supported like you're supposed to. So, but it was good. It was good verification there. But go ahead.
Well, Tim, one thing I wanted to add to what you said at the beginning, I just thought of it, is that you talked about the United States, America. And I'm saying we got to get this information out to the world, because when we look at the globe, there's so many people that have high blood pressure. Why is that? So we should talk a little bit about that at some point. And I want to say, for one thing, everybody out there should know high blood pressure is reversible nearly all the time. Okay. So if you do the right things, you make the right changes, have the right orientation to your health, high blood pressure is reversible. And I could tell some stories about that. I just want to bring that up for now and lead into that.
So let's come back. Let's make sure we come back to the causes and the why a little bit. But Brett, I can see Brett getting anxious and ready, because Brett's a lifestyle person, and right when you said this reversible, I can see Brett was ready to talk. So Brett, go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I welcomed everybody new that was joining live on TikTok too. As people pop in and pop out, they don't come and just stay like we do on Zoom. But we welcome everybody that's just joined us. We're having a lively discussion about hypertension or high blood pressure, and that it is reversible in most cases. And so that's kind of one of my areas of focus, right, is the wellness side of healthcare, and trying to find solutions without going directly to medication. Medication may be the right solution, but try other options first if you can, because medications also come with so many side effects. And that's why people follow my content on TikTok, is because of those scary drug facts that I talk about. So, some of the solutions that we all know about, right? The number one thing that comes to mind is, everybody should know this, right? Stop smoking if you're smoking, right? That's going to be a big, elevator of blood pressure is smoking. Yeah, I can see you're going to say something, Tim. Let me turn the screen
Well,
back around.
you know you're down in the state of my birthplace, uh, Breck, the healthcare disruptor. And you know, Brett, and you know that the Smoky's not the only way that tobacco is used down there in Arizona. So if not, I just want to say, give them the other way, that other thing that you have to stop if they're from that other type of tobacco use, they have to stop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Any tobacco use, and then obviously alcohol. Too much alcohol is a contributor. It goes back to my personal experience with my grandfather, my dad's dad. Why we don't. Well, I didn't get to spend very much time with him. He passed when I was really young, like 3, 4 years old, and it was his lifestyle, right? A lot of tobacco use, and he used to have those little licorice mint things that he would try to cover up his breath whenever the grandkids came over. And then, of course, alcohol use were the two number one contributing factors. Salt, overuse of salt, table salt, or too many processed foods that have a lot of salt in them. That's another thing that should be pretty well known, right? There's been a lot of studies that people should be aware of, just those really minor things. But then what are some of the good things that you can do, right? And that's where you get into the nutrition of eating, a more healthy, balanced diet of whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Don't underestimate nuts and seeds. I mean, one of my favorite snacks is snacking on nuts and seeds, because there's so many good benefits, including some of those natural nut oils that you're getting out of the nuts and seeds as well. So I can see that Dr. Bob probably has something to say about that.
How did you know I had something ready to jump out of my chair here?
Right, but right before you do, Bob, sorry, because it's my mistake. I got to make up for it again. I just get so anxious to get into the discussion here that I often neglect to tell people, if they've got questions, please throw them in, bring them out. If you're on whatever forum you're on, get them to us. We'll try to address them here in next few minutes, because we only say we officially go a half hour, but then we do stay up to an extra half hour to answer people question. So sorry for that interruption, Bob, but just did want to get that out to make people show that they can interact with us and don't have to wait if they so choose to.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Tim. Yeah, put the questions in the chat and we'll get right to it. So one of the factors I want to talk about is something that I've discovered over the last 20 some years of working with people with high blood pressure, is that the blood pressure is a result of what they call peripheral vascular resistance. That's a fancy way of saying that the small capillaries and blood vessels have a lot of resistance. Well, the question is, why do they have so much resistance? One of the primary factors that I've found over the years is that you can have the muscles can be in excess contraction. When the muscles are contracting, they're squeezing down on the blood vessels, creating that resistance. And then that's why, in my opinion, that's why a lot of people will take blood pressure medications, a lot of them sometimes, and they won't be controlled, because if you're compressing with your muscles down on those blood vessels through stress reactions, automatic stress reactions, whatever it happens to be, there's no way the drugs are going to be able to adequately open those up. So I had a woman, and I used to run group programs, I still do on occasion, with hundreds of people at a time, and I led from the stage, and I would tell people, look, you're going to be using guided meditation for relaxation. You're going to use effective muscle release to release muscles that are in excess contraction from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And as you do this, you have to monitor, whatever drugs you're taking, you monitor what the drugs are for. If you're taking high blood pressure medication, monitor your blood pressure. So I had a woman who was 145 over 95, with fully medicated with several different blood pressure meds on board, meaning that she was not controllable, right? But they were just bringing it down. And so I told her, I said, look, you got to monitor your blood pressure, and if you see changes, get to your doctor. So after 3 sessions in the program, she called me up and said, and all the time she's doing effective muscle release to release muscles in excess contraction. She's doing guided meditation to relax and de-stress. And she called me up and said, Dr. Bob, I just took my blood pressure. It was 90 over 60, from 145 over 95, 90 over 60. And I went to my doctor, and they saw the change. They didn't do anything. The thing is, if she kept going the way she was going, her blood pressure, she could have died. I mean, anything could have happened. Certainly passed out. So I just told her, you got to get with your doctor immediately and have them tell them what's going on. If they don't do something, go to the emergency room. You've got to get this thing taken care of. You need dosage adjustment. And I had plenty of people who were able to get off their blood pressure meds because once they release the muscles in their arms and their legs, they could release the muscles of excess contraction. The blood vessels would open up. The blood flow would be unencumbered like it was before. And the one thing I can say, if you have a blood pressure monitor, do this test. Get yourself stabilized and calm. Take your blood pressure 3 times, maybe 2 if you get the identical ones, right, Tim? And then what you do is when you're sitting there, just contract all of the skeletal muscles. You can contract your arms, your chest, your abdominals, your leg muscles, and after 1 minute, check your blood pressure. And I guarantee you, it'll be, if you're normally, let's say 120/80, you're going to be 140 to 50 over 100, easy. And what I do is I tell people, okay, then once you do that, take a breath, relax yourself, just let it go, and take 1 more minute, and see it come down. That tells me that excess muscle contraction can affect blood pressure in a big way. So I just wanted people to understand that. And so when I put my contact information in the chat, so if anybody wants to have further conversations about this, or somebody who's got uncontrolled hypertension, let's chat. Then contact Breck, me, or Tim, and we can have some conversations with you about it.
All right, beautiful. And I want to come back to that. You got a key thing there, like we talked earlier about that. I mentioned earlier that even within 6 months, you can do a lot of damage to a lot of parts of the body. So getting that immediate relief, drugs or otherwise, can be key. And you point out a couple of things there for immediate relief. So I want to come back to that, but I also want to now, there are a couple of questions that came up I want to make sure we address. So one was, we mentioned taking the blood pressure 2 to 3 times. If 2 don't match up, take it the 3rd time. One question was, is there a minimum amount of time that you want to wait in between taking taking the blood pressure again? You have thoughts on that, Breck or Bob? You're on mute, Dr. Bob.
The key is to have yourself be stable, relaxed, breathing, and just calm yourself down. You want to get yourself to a basal calm rate. I usually say 5 minutes. 5 minutes is usually long enough for somebody to relax. Right. And also, because I do a lot with future visioning, it's important to future vision that your blood pressure is so low, it's wonderful.
My recommendation always is to take that big deep breath in through your nose, let it out slowly out through your mouth. Do that 2 or 3 times. Completely calms yourself down, like Dr. Bob is suggesting, and then retake your blood pressure.
Right. And the only thing I would add to that is that it's good to raise your arm, clench and unclench your fist while you're taking that deep breath a little bit, a couple of times, because that blood because of the contraction of the cuff up there, it can contract it and keep some, lack of a non-medical term, trap some blood up there that can throw the measurement off. So you want to make sure that gets out of that. Now, the other thing was, there's a question out here we talk about seeds and nuts as being good part of the diet to help with. Do we have any thoughts on what types of seeds and nuts are good to take?
Yeah, for me, it's all of them. All of them are great, right? If you don't have an allergy, it's natural. What we get in trouble with is getting all the flavored nuts that have extra bunch of salt or honey or sugar or something on it, coating on it. So, one of my favorite snacks is I just get those baking almonds, a big bag of those baking unsalted almonds from Costco, and that's kind of my daily snack, is a couple of handfuls of those. But yeah, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds are great. Enjoy those, and mixing those in my yogurt parfaits in the morning with some fresh berries.
All right.
So keep in mind also that the seeds themselves are great and they have fiber. It's the seed oils that are It's the seed oil. There's certain seed oils that are not helpful for health. And I don't remember all the details about that. I have to look it up, but I come across that all the time.
Yeah, you would have to eat a truckload to really get anything too toxic. But I mean, there's even studies on how Brazil nuts can actually lower your bad cholesterol. There's just not a big lobbying firm behind Brazil nut growers to bring that up, so that everybody knows that little tidbit. But it's a pretty interesting fact that yeah, you don't want to eat, it's moderation in all things. You don't want to overindulge in any one thing, and that's the same with Brazil nuts. You wouldn't want to eat a whole bag of them every day because you're trying to lower cholesterol. No, you'd get some other things from the nut that isn't as good for you, that your body already produces.
Right.
It's probably worth talking a little bit about statins. When you say just because they're so prevalent, I mean, it's more than half the country on statins. I mean, the number is astronomical. And what really bugs me about statins, the whole statin thing, is that, well, number one, they're showing that the long-term side effects from statins are problematic. So there are problems with most long-term pharmaceuticals. The level of statin, the normal level of statin was considered to be 240 many years ago. And now it just keeps coming down and down and down. And I'm sure it's, pardon my conspiracy theory business here, but I'm sure it's an effort to get more and more people onto statins, right? So they keep lowering the level. My mother had a cholesterol level of over 300 her whole life, and she never took a statin, and she died at 84 of lung cancer because, of course, if you're smoking that long, you might get bitten.
Right. So I'd like to, I want to tie that back to something else we were talking. Well, one, that everybody might not completely understand the time between statins and hypertension, but it's there as well, because the statins are usually taken to try and in an attempt to lower cholesterol. Well, cholesterol gets in as part of that hardening their arteries, increasing that tension in there, that more resistance, which can drive hypertension as well. Hence why, as part of that whole cardiovascular stuff, the doctors want to do with us as part of that. That said, where I want to also tie that in is something where we talked about other types of, I think Brad was mentioning, you guys were mentioning, getting on the blood pressure medication if we needed to. We did it. We did something earlier on, a few interactive podcast sessions before. We talked about how do you communicate with your healthcare provider, and I think Brett can put that has the link to go listen to replays and things of that nature. Well, part of that, what I want to know, so there have been a couple times in my life where my doctor wanted to put me on statins, and I had the conversation. They would say you're borderline high blood pressure. It's the right communication, which you said. I did never actually. I went on the statin for about 2 or 3 weeks, got off that, said no, I'm getting it down another way. But the communication with that doctor was, I don't want to. I'm relatively young here, and I was at the time. I was probably 38. She wanted to put me on them, and I said I don't want to be on this long term. My objective is to get off this. If I get on this, how do we get off that? How do we work off it? And I think it's called, the medical term, I think, is titrate off of it. How do we try to titrate off of that? Am I locked into this forever on this? And I think that's the type of dialogue. If you want to go on the high pressure medication or on the statins, I think that's the type of dialogue to have with that healthcare provider as well. Brett?
Yeah, I'm always going to say, hey, let's try everything else first. If the doctor prescribes it, they prescribe it, right? But why not try a supplement, right? You may be low in potassium. You may need more, omega-3s. You may need more, fatty acids. You need more magnesium. So there's certain supplements that can also be very beneficial in lowering blood pressure without going immediately to a medication that you can start to become dependent upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, in one of my past lives, I ran a home care agency for the elderly. And so as part of that, as we were working up the care plan for that elderly person in conjunction with their doctors, we would look at, how can we manage this blood pressure in other ways either to reduce that amount of medication or get off of it. And that's a number of the things that you mentioned there, Brett. Now, along those lines, Dr. Bob got into earlier, that you have to give me the proper term for it again, Bob, but I'll call it the muscle contraction stuff. That where that could
excess muscle contraction.
Excess muscle contraction. To me, so I want to go back up to that point of where we said even in 6 months, you can do a lot of damage to yourself if you got hypertension. So to me, there are also key things to try and take advantage of to get immediate relief on that, even on an intermittent basis, as you get that baseline down. So I think the work you talked about and relief and that contraction is good. I think there are other things that I know I can do that I've worked on both in my home care world and as a wellness plan manager for people, helping people achieve their optimal wellness, is like your future visioning, other parts of this meditation and the visioning that you can get that down. Surprisingly to some people, and it's all because it increases that sort of blood flow and they're releasing it. Warm baths can do it, saunas can do it, things of that nature. So I won't belabor it because there's a person on with us who often says, Tim, this is information that can be Googled. So I'm not going to go down that path too long, but I just want to let people know, yes, there is information you can get out there and find that's there that you can get immediate relief in there in addition to working with Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I just wanted to say, when you were talking about high blood pressure and all the different factors that can feed into high blood pressure, one of the main factors, I think, are the repetitive movements that people do every day. The average person takes between 30,000 and 50,000 repetitive movements every day, and most people are doing those incorrectly. And so one of the major movements that is done every day is walking. And most people are not walking properly. And when you think about how the cardiovascular system works, if somebody's standing up all the time, not moving around, the blood and fluid is going to pool in the feet and the ankles, right? That's what leads to edema or swelling of the feet and ankles. And if somebody doesn't walk properly, if they're walking very flat-footed and they can actually not allow that calf muscle to pump, which is the major return of blood to the heart. The calf muscle provides that major pumping return of blood to the heart. And so improper walking is a big deal. I always tell people who I work with that if I train you how to walk properly and I train you how to de-stress and relax, you're likely, if you have high blood pressure, you're likely to be out of it soon enough. And there's other things too, like effective muscle release that I do in other modalities. But the repetitive movements of daily living and proper walking are so important. And it's just not going for a walk or walking your 10,000. I mean, walking 20,000 steps a day, walking them improperly is not necessarily going to make a difference when it comes to relieving high blood pressure from pooling of blood in the legs. And the other thing we should probably do in another session is talk about inflammation diets.
Yeah,
because that's a big factor too.
Absolutely, I think we should continue that. And Breck, I know I'm going to come to you because I know you do a lot of exercise, and I know you do it properly. So I want you to comment on what type of exercise that you advocate for this lowering of hypertension. But before we do that, Diana has had her hand up patiently, so I want to bring Diana in to ask her question of us.
Well, thank you. And the word factors keys in a few things with me. And one of them is the whole awareness piece of just how, as a culture, we don't even think of testing our blood pressure. I mean, if we don't feel well and we're catching a cold, we get a thermometer and we take our fever. It's like we grew up in a situation where we immediately go to the thermometer. If we have a fever, then that puts us, that maybe that's when we need to call the doctor. And we don't use any type of a measurement or do, I mean, I'm asking a question. I don't believe we're taught, it's an awareness thing to even test high blood pressure. And the question of environment is another piece of this. I just happened to write an article that had to do with workforce stresses and challenges. And some of the statistics in terms of what people suffer in the workforce are kind of very disconcerting in terms of 87% of employees are faced at least with one mental health challenge the past year. And 65% of employees have experienced mental health stressors that negatively impact their work performance. And that's an increase of 35% since 2020. So the question for me is, one of the questions is, what is it in the environment that triggers all of this? And the second piece of that is, if people are aware of that, then perhaps that will shift them into this care of them, it's self-care, to do something about their blood pressure, to at least test for it. So I'm concerned that as a culture, probably global, we don't even think of, perhaps I'm not feeling well, I have a headache, my heart is racing, maybe it's my blood pressure, and that doesn't even exist for us. So I just wanted to raise that as an issue.
Really, really insightful comment, because it is, you know, it starts at a very young age, just even with the processed foods that we're attracted to, right? And so a lot of it starts with that, and then, you know, you bring up the thought about, you know, maybe the headache has something to do with it. Also, hydration, proper hydration could have a lot to do with it too, right? With having headaches, and so there's so many things to consider, but it's almost a learned behavior from when we were young, that man, those chips are delicious, you know, those processed foods, snacks that are available to you, kind of get us on that less healthy lifestyle that then just starts to build up and add up in our systems as we get older and start to experience some of these warning signs.
Good, Diana, I think your point about the fact that we take our temperature, even though with the way the body heals is for the body's temperature to rise. So as long as the body's temperature doesn't rise too high, you know, we want to let it go. We don't want to bring it down. That's how the body heals. And but yet everybody takes their temperature. So I think it really needs to start with the conventional healthcare system, with the physicians, where physicians ought to be taught and told that, hey, this is really important. If people check it, they can monitor it. We can save a lot of people's lives just by monitoring it. So, and everybody goes to their physician for all kinds of visits, wellness visits, sick visits, whatever it is. So I think it's got to start there, really.
Right. And I'm going to tap into Philomena here in a second, but I'm going to make a comment here, because, you know, we have Bernard with us here, and Bernard is always, and before he jumps in and beats us up again, he always likes us to say, you know, you get how early should this really start, and who should we all getting all this. And so I've learned my lesson from Bernard in his last interaction with us.
Exactly.
There he is. He's with us. Yeah.
And somehow we also have to, as part of our mission, get this into the schools. I remember even probably in elementary school, certainly, and it was junior high for me, certainly in middle school, they gave us, you started getting into the health courses. Well, it ought to be taught in there. Part of this is not just what your systems are, but we need to get that out in terms of talking about, what is this self-care? How do you perform this self-care? What is right to monitor, and how do you do it over time on that? Now, that's also, because that's not there, that's also part of what I do as a wellness plan manager when I help people to work with them hand in hand to achieve their optimal wellness. I often say that's like, I give two analogies on that to save time. It's like a general contractor for your health is what I'm doing on that, working with people like Bob, healthcare providers, your personal trainer, bringing it all together and mapping out how do you get to the state of wellness you want. And so like a general contractor, or what a financial manager does for you from your finances side. But unlike a financial manager, I don't want to be with you forever. And so I do a knowledge transfer and teach them how to do that self-care for themselves using the tools, the techniques, and the methods to do so, because that self-care is just so important. Having been a decent athlete. You know, when I was young, I played. The only one I was never good at that I did was gymnastics, but I stayed with gymnastics through in high school a little bit. Pommel horse was the one, but you know, I played baseball, second base, and pitched. I played football for a while, missed the football genes. My dad was a semi-pro football player. My nephew played on Notre Dame's national champion team. But then I did go on at least get a scholarship from wrestling. So why do I bring all up? Because there is in that environment, you do get some self-care teaching to an extent. Modern, you know, what's your pulse? How do you recover from that? What's your breathing like? Are you taking that? So that really kind of started me on a path on that I then, you know, took further over time. Brett, do you want to say something? Then we got to get to Philomena and Bernard.
No, I was just going to make sure that you recognize that we have some other hands up.
Okay, I think Philomena came up first. So go ahead, Philomena.
Maybe I should let Bernard go off because you people say he's a top guy. Okay, so
Philomena, you're saying that it's easy to follow Bernard because he's a tough guy, right?
Yeah, yes. You people talk about it.
I'm sure you'll
okay.
do fine, Philomena.
Okay, so I like the discussion. I really like the discussion. And what I wanted to ask is, if you like, is it Bragg? Your name, I only see healthcare disruptor. I don't see your name. Mm-hmm. So he said something about when you're taking the blood pressure, you take deep breath, you relax. And then Dr. Bob said something about your muscle, relaxing your muscle. So my question is, when you do that, when you're taking your blood pressure, so it can influence the blood pressure at a time. But after that, how do you maintain that?
Great question. I could address that.
Yep.
So that's a great question. How do you maintain a lower blood pressure after you relax yourself with breath and you relax your muscles and you take your blood pressure, and then bam, you go back into your life and everything starts up again. It's like revs up. So when I teach interrupting automatic stress reactions for people, when you interrupt an automatic stress reaction, it doesn't matter what you're doing, how active you are, you're able to interrupt that automatic stress reaction, which leads to hypercontracted muscles and all kinds of postural distortions and other related events. So interrupting the automatic stress reactions is very important. And then when you train your muscles to release through effective muscle release routines that I've developed and that I teach, when the muscles learn how to release, they stay released, they stay relaxed. So that allows you to go through your day, and you can take your blood pressure anytime during the day, and you'll find that the blood pressure is relatively normal. So that's how you do. I help people do it through interrupting these automatic processes, these automatic reactions through stress and automatic reactions that lead to excess neuromuscular contraction.
Right. Yeah. So Bob, I agree with it. That interruption and how to do it is good. And then also becomes like Breck, the healthcare disruptor, is mentioned a couple of times. And what I work on with my clients is basically what you do with this health, with your future visioning, this that disruption, is to work these things into your life daily. Philomena, you're a diet person. Well, you just can't eat right once a week. It's at least 5 days out of the week you gotta eat right, and it's the exercise. We talked about exercise a little bit, and Breck, I never did come back to you a little bit, but type you do, so feel free to jump in. But to me, especially in hypertension, most people think that it's only, a lot of people think that the only thing that works with hypertension is the aerobic stuff, but no, if the resistance training helps with hypertension because it helps get fat out of the body. Fat helps with higher blood volume and causes the heart to work more on that. So various types of exercise, can help on that. Would you agree, Breck?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm anxious to get to Bernard's comment or question as well, since we're running late on time.
Yeah. So Bernard, you have something for us? I know his hand went down.
That was just because we took too long.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to follow back up with Diana. I thought she made such an excellent comment that I wanted to tap in and follow up with what she was talking about, because I view it, and Tim was talking about this a little bit, I view it a specific type of way. In all actuality, in my opinion, what she's referring to is how do you become efficient, daily efficient, just like you mentioned, Tim.
Mhm.
And I look at it in such a unique way. For instance, when it comes to, your physical well-being, we have went down a path of understanding through time how we view it to be efficient. So we go down that path, us as a culture, we go down that path of understanding. We feel something, we maybe do some research, and then we go to a doctor. Even when it comes to, graduating school, there's a path to that. There's a path to being efficient in these things, whereas there's a beginning point, middle point, and, a certificate or degree, a graduation point, or a way of, the doctor who we expect to actually relieve of that pain or of this scenario that we're in. But when it comes to that mental side, exactly what Dan is talking about, there is nothing, there is no proactive kind of fluidity to how we kind of move forward on the mental side. And that's with feeling these things internally and understanding them, taking the action. There's no beginning, middle, or end, no direct understood cultural middle, beginning, and end to this. That proactive side, once again, is the place where a lot of people leave alone, and they focus when it comes to mentally with reactions.
Mhm.
And after this has happened, this is what you should do. When this occurs, this is how you should feel. This is how you react. Come see me in this space if you're feeling this way. And I think people miss the ball a lot of times on that proactive side to the mental space that we all live in. When we go work out, there's a beginning way of working out, and then it gets more intense. And then your body gets used to you, and you're able to work out and train a specific type of way. There's a course to that. There's just no fluidity on that mental side. And I think there should be more dedicated time to just the proactive side, which comes with, like Dan is talking about, understanding the stats, teaching, diving into the culture, and really teaching and creating a path daily. Like, how do we respond, like what you all are talking about, on a daily basis? What is the definition of daily efficiency when it comes to the mental side, which is a question that the young lady who left just asked you. Well, after I do this test, then what? Well, that's how, all she's saying is, how am I on a daily, how do I react and view this on a daily basis? Because nobody knows that, and I think there should be more conversation right there. So I just think the way Diana brought it up was beautiful. But what we're all really saying is proactivity, daily efficiency in all of these different categories and topics and subjects.
Right.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I might ask Dr. Bob to plug his ears, because usually, I don't want to get too big and have him thinking that I finally agree with us on things.
Oh my
But
God.
I will take it. Another way of phrasing is I'll take joint credit. Another way of phrasing my daily activity is Dr. Bob often say it's got to be a way of being. It's got welcome. And so you've got to be a self-care person. You have to understand how to do it and learn that, and we can help you with that and other things that's out there. And then you've got to make it part of you. I guess maybe this is my own therapy. Maybe this self-interactive podcast is a little bit of therapy for me. I've talked often about how wrestling saved me from a life of obesity, but I still have to watch it. And if I don't, my wife can weigh once a month.
You better be careful there, Tim. You better be careful. You're talking about your wife's weight.
Yeah, stay on track. I work with my clients and tailor it to them. Some of them, is if they check once a month, it's fine. If I don't check daily, I get off track. Yeah, because I can put on weight like that. There's been times that I've missed a week, and the next thing you know, I put on 10 pounds because I've just gone off track to keep myself on that. So why do I say that? Because you got to understand, you got to have some self-awareness. You got to be taught the right self-care, but then you got to build it into a customized daily routine for yourself on what to do. Go ahead, Dr. Bob.
That's excellent, Tim. Yeah, excellent. When we talk about people being overweight, there's one thing I want to say about that. People do not have to lose weight to get relief from high blood pressure and get off their meds. People do not have to lose weight to relieve chronic pain. It just doesn't have to happen. Now, is losing weight and being lean body mass a great idea? Absolutely. It's been shown that the best longevity is related to lean body mass and little stress. Okay, so if you have little stress and lean body mass, you can live a long time. Okay, with just a reasonable diet. So there's a lot of reasons to lose weight, of course, but you don't. But I want to bust the myth that you have to lose weight to relieve your blood pressure. That you have to lose weight to get out of pain. That you have to lose weight for just about anything. The only thing I can think of where you have to lose weight is maybe if you are carrying a lot of extra weight and your joints are hurting because of the excess weight. It's like if you were at your lean body mass and you carried around an extra 100 pounds, it would really be problematic, and you would know it. Anyway, let's just bust that myth that you don't have to lose weight to relieve blood pressure, get out of chronic pain, and other factors that will help.
I agree with you. You can relieve it. What I would say is, but as you also said, there's a lot of reasons too, and I simplified it when I said weight. What you really want to do is fat, because it's a lot of the fat that causes the problem. But what are some of the reasons for the fat? Is about that brown fat that's in people can talk to people. It talks to them in terms of the hormones that it produces and puts out there, the stress that it causes on that. So there's reasons to it. So I agree with you. There are ways to alleviate your challenges that you have aside from that, but also a good long-term, as you mentioned, for longevity, for overall performance, and for other health reasons, it's good too, because it's every pound, and actually this is a pound, every pound of weight is equal that you have on your joint, and when you walk on it, it's equal to 4 pounds of pressure. So why put that extra stress on your body if it's not necessary, and why put that extra stress on your heart and your blood volume if you don't have to, on that one. But Bernard's got another. Bernard, go ahead.
I know it's only about 3 minutes left, but just one quick question for you all. Can hypertension still occur if you are proactive in this space and, consider yourself doing things that should limit it? Is there still ability for it to occur? At what percentage? And give me some suggestions of what you all, each three of you all individuals would think are some of the most important things to do when it comes to relieving or kind of stopping hypertension in its tracks. What would be the number one thing you all would suggest?
Go ahead, Dr. B.
In my opinion, if somebody wants to stop hypertension in its tracks, they have to do a variety of things. In my view, some of the most important things are to do the effective muscle release strategies to release muscles that are in excess contraction, to relieve the pressure on the peripheral microcirculation, future visioning for being a person who is free of high blood pressure, has normal blood pressure, has a great cardiovascular system, and other future visioning components that someone can construct with the right guidance, which is one of the things that I do, and others do that too. So there's effective muscle release, there's future visioning, and then there's guided meditation. There's the whole, knowing how to relax yourself, to interrupt automatic stress reactions, automatically interrupt automatic patterns that are destructive for health. And if people are doing those three things, and then of course incorporating some others like proper diet, which would be really valuable, getting some exercise like we've talked about, all important. But those first three things I mentioned, I think personally are the most important to help somebody reverse blood pressure, because most people haven't tried this. They've tried all kinds of other things to do, and they haven't tried those three. So if somebody comes to me and they have not tried those three things or haven't tried at least one or two of them, then I'm going to take them through that, and we're going to be effective at reversing their high blood pressure.
So, Dr. Bob, how much of it is hereditary, though? How much does it come from your family, and you just kind of got those genes?
Yeah, that's a great question, Breck. So I started out a strong proponent of genetic inheritance. Now because we know the gene expression can be modified on the fly actually with individuals. I'm more in line now with behavioral inheritance. Everybody sits around the dinner table together and eats the same way. They learn how to communicate the same way. They learn how to walk. You know, kids walk after the parents. You can see a man walking down the street or a woman walking down the street, and their kid is walking just like them. I guarantee you, it's mostly dysfunctional. So I ascribe a lot to behavioral inheritance, and also if somebody says I'm genetically determined to have this thing, then if they think that way, then there's almost nothing that could ever help them. So that's the part of future visioning. And I've taken people with heavily genetically oriented conditions like essential tremor, right? It's very heavily genetically based. So, and I've gotten them out of I've gotten them out of the shakes basically. So I don't like to even think of something as I have a strong genetic predisposition for this, because we know people who their parents had type 2 diabetes and they watched themselves and they never got type 2 diabetes because they were careful. They lived the lifestyle that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's my take on that, Greg. Thanks for asking.
No, I think that's a good thing to think about too, that because we can get into that mindset that oh no, this is just going to happen to me and we've got to get out of that and break free of it. But you know, one thing that I will disagree with that is absolutely inherent is that Dr. Bob, if your parents didn't have kids, neither would you.
Let me see. Can I argue that? I don't think I can argue that, Brett.
the one thing that I can actually get in there that Dr. Bob can't argue with and have a more scientific expression on. So
that's right. And so Bernard, I think, you know, to your query, and I agree, find myself agreeing with Dr. Bob. I don't want to say that DNA dictates. But certainly, even if you're doing a lot of the things that we talk about, and most of the things we're talking about, you still could develop that hypertension from a hereditary factor. And so then you've got to have potentially other ways of controlling it, and you might have to go to the medication route to do it if the other ways don't work. Then I'd also do agree, and you know, another factor that comes up, although, you know, one would help that meditation would help with stress. The guided visualization Bob talks about, exercise would help with stress. But even if you're doing part of eating right, exercising, et cetera, but the stress gets out of control, you still got the hypertension. So that's where I also find myself agreeing with Dr. Bob this week on it's an integrated approach. You've got to have that integrated approach to really keep this thing under control. Diet, exercise, the mental aspects of it, and as part of the lifestyle things that Breck talked about. I used to being a Nebraskan and a wrestler, Breck, you know, that's why I brought up that chewing tobacco, which you didn't really go into. We used to do that to stop eating when I was a lightweight wrestler to avoid weight wrong, and I developed a habit for a while on that, and that's what had me at borderline hyperuppressor for a while. When I cut that out, I found it going down. So it's all those things. And that's when I was, you know, I had been measured at 6% at that point, 6% body fat. I wasn't under stress. I was working out 4 times a day, but I was chewing tobacco, and that tobacco put me over the edge. So it's got to be an integrated, continual integrated approach. But what I will also say on that is and when you're taking that integrated approach, it's not just good for your hypertension, it's good for your overall well-being, for your health, for your performance. So you'll reap many other benefits, you know, from taking that integrated approach.
Yeah. You guys said 2 very important things that I took away from this, 2 different topics. That dysfunctional behavior inheritance is something that, you know, I don't think I've ever even thought of or dove into. I think that's amazing to think about as it relates to the topics you all are talking about in mindset improvement. And those 2 things I think do go hand in hand with the ability to, you know, fight or challenge hypertension. I think improving those 2 things, and at least even having that thought, dysfunctional behavior inheritance is very, very important in my opinion, or something that I'm glad you all made me aware of, that I think does cross paths with some of the things that, create a lineage of issues for a particular family, et cetera. So that's great. That's great.
Breck,
Excellent.
anything you'd like to, thank you for that, Bernard. Anything you'd like to add, Breck?
No, just want to thank everybody that tuned in live on TikTok, and I'm glad we ran out of time and didn't get to my what my exercise routine. I feel a little inferior when I'm talking to a couple of D1 athletes and a former pro athlete. I'm like, well, God, you guys are far superior in your athletic training than I ever was. But yeah, it's something important to continue on in life, right? And continue to find healthy, fun, constructive ways to get out and get some exercise.
Sure. And I think you even, I'm gonna tweak Bernard here a little bit, who's the pro athlete, case former pro athlete, in case someone didn't know. I think you're fitter than Bernard is now, Greg.
Well, I probably didn't take
You
as much wear and
absolutely are.
tear.
You
I didn't take
absolutely
as much wear and tear on my body as he did either, too. So, and when we were doing a couple of marathons a year, my wife and I, that takes a toll. Kind of wears on those joints a little bit. So I can only imagine playing the schedule that Bernard had in his NBA days and trying to recover and get right back out there and do it again. It takes its toll.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, like I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think also that we, I think this one, given how prevalent it is, and I think we just kind of scratched the surface of the discussion. And I think there's been a couple times people have said, I wish you would spend even a couple of weeks diving into these things. I think there's a lot more for us to really talk about in hypertension and have the impact and advice. So I think we'll revisit this again, next week, if that's all right with you as well, Brett.
Yeah, we definitely have more we could cover. We didn't even get into some of the medications that you should be aware of. If you've been prescribed a medication that doesn't have anything to do with blood pressure, all of a sudden now you see a spike in your blood pressure. So we should probably bring that to everyone's awareness that there are some specific, even over the counter medications that you need to be aware of if you are dealing with trying to keep your blood pressure lower, not have hypertension. There's some pretty common medications you need to stay away from.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for being here, everyone. And next week, the same time.